Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "You washed his car, now wash my car." TLDR. I like washing cars for people that aren't a-holes. Also, a couple people asked about Jerry. I haven't seen him in person in years. This story is a few years old. He did wind up moving to be closer to his daughters as his back deteriorated. He was a good guy with a ton of stories and a good sense of humor. I hope he's still kicking out there somewhere. So this story takes place a few years back. I've moved out of the share house and into an apartment. I'm not sure if girlfriend was living with me officially yet, or if she just spent every day at my place and ate all my food, joking baby I love you, and no she isn't the CB of this story. This is the story of my neighbor CB. So, my new place was in a small apartment block pretty close to work. There were I think 12 apartments and everybody got a single parking space under the building. Now when I first moved in somebody was using my parking space for storage. The spaces weren't numbered but there was a schematic in my lease that spelled out which one was mine, think, third space from the entrance etc. Anyhow after a couple weeks of back and forth with the real estate agent don't go anywhere until the management company threatens me with a fine for parking in the visitor spot all day when I walk to work. I point out that I'm trying to park in my spot, but it's filled with somebody else's crap, think boxes of old clothes, books and miscellaneous household items. Management pull their heads out of their bums. Posts a note on the garage's door with a threat to remove the stuff and hey presto CB appears. CB is a woman in her 30s with 3 kids and a revolving boyfriend. Pretty sure I never met the same guy twice. Our first interaction was her ranting about how some a-hole was making her move all of her children's things out of her storage unit. She'd apparently had an agreement, bullied, guilted the previous tenant into letting her have the space for the last 3 years. But now some prissy little skinny witch, she'd seen my girlfriend moving some of my stuff into the apartment, had taken over and was forcing her out. I just kept my big mouth shut, nodded along and offered to help her move her precious hoard. I had to suppress a chuckle when she informed me that it was all going to the other vacant parking spot for the remaining unrented apartment. Sorry to kick the can down the road number 12. Anyway I'm carrying a second box that has no less than 8 DVD, Blu-ray players in it when it occurs to me that some of this stuff is probably stolen. I mean who has 8 DVD, Blu-ray players? The kids, 7 to 12 years old? Maybe, seem nice enough and it only takes maybe 30 minutes to move all of the crap. I bid CB farewell and vow to never leave the garage door unlocked. Now cause all the parking spots were under the building I used to park outside on the street to wash my car. I'm that guy with a bucket of car care stuff you see on weekends festooning a vehicle that has absolutely nothing special about it with way too much love. So there I am in the oldest rattiest home clothes I own scrubbing my wheels and rubbing wax into paint when my neighbor, let's call him Jerry, pulls up. Now to paint a picture, Jerry is 70 and bent over like 30 degrees at the hips due to old age and a work injury 20 years ago. He walks with a cane but is very independent with the exception of a home help nurse that visits a couple times a week. Jerry gets out of his car and shuffles over to compliment my work. He laments that he has to take his car to the auto washer these days and those gosh darned machines just don't do his baby justice. Jerry's baby is an early 2000s Camry. We commiserate our love of mediocre mass-produced vehicles and I offer to wash Jerry's car for him. Jerry's eyes light up and he's genuinely thankful. He says he can't let me do it for free so he hobbles back to his car and drives off, returning a short while later with 2 6-packs of beer. Jerry and I drink a beer each and chat while I finish my own car and move on to his. It was a good afternoon of stories and beers so I didn't mind in the slightest. When I was finished Jerry pushes the second 6-pack into my hands and tells me I do good work, he might even hire me again in the future. This whole process is ongoing for a couple months. I wash, Jerry talks, and we just sort of hang out. At the end there is always a 6-pack for my hard work. But evil was stirring in the background, for our happy car washing experience had been noticed by CB. The next time Jerry and I set up, Jerry by now has a lawn chair and mini cooler for the occasion. I'm mid-wash when CB pulls up behind Jerry in her filthy minivan. CB and the kids get out and CB says something like, "I'll be back in a little while." Now naive me thinks she talking about having trapped Jerry's Camry between my car and hers. Nope. Anyhow, Jerry and I finish up. I help him pack his stuff up and the cars go back into the parking garage. I'm minding my own business inside when there is a knock at the door. It's CB and this week's boyfriend, TWBF. CB is livid. "You cleaned the old man's car, why haven't you cleaned mine?" I'm confused, but I tell the dynamic duo that I didn't know I was supposed to clean her car. I only wash my own and Jerry pays me in beer to help him with his. I don't owe either of them anything, and if they're so concerned about it, maybe they should clean their own vehicle. To his credit, TWBF just looks confused by the whole thing and is shuffling awkwardly. But CB doubles down. "She's a single mother. Ouch. I mean, TWBF is right there. He might be the one. And she left the keys in the car to make my job easier. What if someone had stolen her precious vehicle? It would have been my fault." At this point I'm done with this stupid conversation, and some other shit CB has pulled is fresh in my mind, so I tell them to pound sand. It's a free street. If they want their shit washed they can do it themselves, otherwise quit bothering me with their bullshit. Our next car wash session in couple weeks later, TWBF. "Wow, this guy has staying power," shows up with a 6-pack of cheap beer and tells me to do the van first cause they need it later. Jerry and I laugh at him. I chuck him an old sponge and tell him he better get started if he wants it done quickly. TWBF sort of shuffles around while his brain computes. It must have got hot in his head because he drank one of the beers to cool down. Then tells me to duck myself. He can do it better anyways, drinks another beer and goes inside. Jerry and I have another laugh and finish up for the day when a cop car rolls down the street. Now my city has an ordinance against drinking on the street, so yes, Jerry and I were in the wrong here. But the street is very quiet, and before this I have never seen a cop car just cruise by. 2 cops approach us and say they have a complaint about 2 men drinking heavily and abusing passerbys and people in the apartment complexes. I'm about to explain when Jerry looks the cops in the eye and says, "You caught me, officer." The cops share a look, but Jerry just keeps going. "I've been out here drinking watching this fella wash the cars. I don't think I drunk enough to abuse people and forget about it, but you caught me fair and square, best take me away." He holds his hands out so they can slap the cuffs on and finishes with, "You might have to help me up, can't stand without my cane." The cops are just sort of sharing a look like they don't know how to proceed with this confession. They look at the 3 empties neatly arranged on the lid of the cooler, shrug and tell Jerry to put his hands down. We get a verbal warning about drinking in the street and told to enjoy our day. TWBF was later picked up by different cops on an outstanding warrant after an anonymous tip pointed out his new unlisted residence to the relevant authorities. Turns out he wasn't the one after all. Jerry and I switched to cokes and the car washes continued until I moved out a year later. The next story is titled, "HOA mistakes me for my cousin's wife." Back when I was 18, I'm 26 female now. I was helping my cousin, 30 male, and his newlywed wife, 25 female, move into their new home that has an HOA. I was carrying boxes into the house, and I was covered in sweat. As I was enjoying some rest with a bottle of water, one of the HOA members came up to me to introduce himself. We exchanged pleasantries and then asked, "How long have you and your husband been married?" After that, I told him to please wait and brought in the actual married couple to meet the HOA member. They came out and the man's face dropped. Then, he faked a phone call from the HOA and left. We didn't know anything was wrong at the time. Not even a week after they moved in, I get a call on my cell phone from my cousin. He said that police were raiding his house for possible drugs. I know my cousin. He has a criminal record of a Boy Scout. Every time he gets a prescription for painkillers, he either shreds the note or dumps the pills in the toilet due to fear of addiction. The police found nothing and left. They did apologize. The very next day, his wife was stopped by police in her own driveway. They said that she was suspected for prostitution, even though she was wearing a pantsuit from her job as a cardiologist. They called her hospital to confirm her whereabouts and she was let go. The police came back the day after that after someone claimed that his wife was breaking into their own home. How can someone break into their home through the front door and with their own keys? After a month, the HOA came up to them claiming that they are a nuisance and attempted to put a lien on the house for so many calls to the police. Luckily, my cousin's brother is a lawyer and fought against the lien in court. At court, the HOA member that met the couple on day 1 was revealed to be the one that sent the cops after them so they can be kicked out of the neighborhood. As it turns out, that person testified that he didn't want their kind in his perfect neighborhood. Everyone in that room was dumbstruck. The HOA lawyer immediately dropped the case, apologized to my cousin and his wife. That HOA member was kicked out of the neighborhood for racism. As it turns out, he also called the police on every black and brown person that even passed by his house. Since then, they moved out of the neighborhood after she got a better job offer in her field. I forgot to say, she is black, my cousin is white. The next story is titled, HOA Karen raided my house for toilet paper, disinfectant and hand sanitizer. This happened over a year ago during the height of the pandemic in mid-2020. I'm 29 male, and am a homeowner. I bought a house in 2019 from my uncle because he was well set and wanted to retire to his second home by a lake. Before buying the house, my uncle warned me that the neighborhood has an HOA. But it only affects those who joined it. And my uncle did not. But the price my uncle was offering was half the home's value. I couldn't pass up the offer. So, I bought a house in an HOA neighborhood that wasn't a part of the HOA. Right after I moved in, I got a knock at the door. And when I opened it, I was greeted by an older woman with short graying blonde hair and face covered in thick makeup, and was holding a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA, then asked to come in so she could help me fill out some forms. I knew what she was trying to do because my uncle warned me she did this to every new homeowner in the area who wasn't a part of the HOA. So I quickly and bluntly stated I was not going to join her HOA. Her smile quickly disappeared and she started saying that I did not have a choice as all new homeowners are mandated to join. I told her I knew in advance that was a total lie, and that I will not be paying any dues or fines. And will be ready to call a lawyer if I have to. She called me a thorn to the neighborhood and said she'd be back. Though we did not speak to each other for some time. I expected her to start sending me fines in the mail. But the most I usually got were letters stating that my grass was getting too tall, or my driveway needed sweeping. Those never bothered me because they are normal home chores and need to be done regularly anyway. But several neighbors that were on the HOA's side made it clear they didn't like me because I didn't join, just like my uncle. I said that was fine. We're neighbors, but we don't have to be friends. They said that was fine too because I'm an outsider and they'll never accept me until I join the HOA. Later in early 2020 I got word from a friend that people were starting to buy a lot of disinfectant, toilet paper, and hand sanitizer en masse. I decided the best option was to order these things online. I got 8 big 12 packs of toilet paper, a case of 20 bottles of hand sanitizer, 3 boxes of disposable latex gloves, a couple of boxes of disposable face masks, and a case of 20 large cans of name brand disinfectant spray. I set for the delivery to be signed for only as I did not trust anyone not to steal my packages if they were just left on my porch. When the packages were delivered, several neighbors saw me getting lots of toilet paper and some other packages that contained the other stuff. And just because I'm paranoid guy, I still bought more of the same stuff when I saw it in stores. Like those small cheap 4 packs of toilet paper, or off-brand disinfectant sprays. I bought them because I had a feeling some friends or family might need some soon. And I was right. As expected, toilet paper, disinfectant and sanitizer pretty much disappeared from store shelves for miles around. And people were fighting over hoarding it. Meanwhile, I've got a very generous supply that I still haven't come close to using up. The word of my supply got around fast when people started needing some. A friend of mine ran out of toilet paper and had no hand sanitizer. So, I gave him a couple of the generic 4 packs of TP and a bottle of sanitizer at my door. A few family members ran out too, and I shared with them as well. They were all extremely grateful. But I ended up with several neighbors knocking on my door and asking to buy my supply or wanting handouts. But I refused and said I only gave some of what I had away to friends and family. And they made it pretty clear to me before that we'd never be friends since I refused to join the HOA. So if I were to give some to one neighbor, they'd all want my supplies. And then I'd run out really fast. They didn't like this and harassed me several times from the sidewalk. But I just ignored them. Later, the HOA Karen showed up at my door and told me several neighbors had run out of all the items that this post is about. Then said she wasn't asking, but demanding I share my stock with my neighbors to set a good example. I told her to buzz off because that had nothing to do with me. I may be a jerk. But I'm a well-prepared jerk. And I've read her HOA bylaws online. So even if I was a member of her HOA, which I was not, I wouldn't have to give up my stock either way. She left while yelling at me that one day I'd regret not being a good neighbor or being a part of her HOA. The next time I went to work I was notified around noon by the cameras I had at my house that there was a thief breaking into my home. I could see video of them on my smartphone and it looked like a woman in a spandex suit with her face covered by a hockey mask. I called the police immediately and was allowed to clock out at work so I could rush home. Right around the time I got there the cops were walking HOA Karen out in handcuffs to a police cruiser. She'd broken into my home by using a crowbar to force open the back door and was tossing all of my toilet paper and any other supplies she could grab out into my backyard, where her kids were picking it up and bagging it. I pressed charges and HOA Karen got 6 months in jail and probation. HOA Karen's husband called me to apologize for his wife and told me that he had been planning a divorce for a while because this isn't the first time she's been in trouble with the law, and CPS got involved too because she was using her kids to help steal from me. So he was gonna file for full custody in the divorce. HOA Karen didn't return and someone new was elected HOA president in her place. Her husband didn't move and I see him from time to time. And there's no hard feelings between us. And yes, he did get full custody of his kids because his wife had a longer history with the law than I thought. We're sort of friends now too as we've occasionally had a beer together and he helped me replace my back door that his ex broke. I'm making this post more than a year later because I just saw HOA Karen again. I was visiting some friends in another city and saw her working at the local supermarket there bagging groceries. As soon as we saw each other she obviously recognized me because she scowled and refused to look at me again the entire time I was there. Karma is a real witch, isn't it, Karen? The last story is titled, Clubhouse of No Tomorrow. This is my retelling of this story as told about from my mother. It happened 30+ years ago and before I was born. My grandmother had lived in a house in this one neighborhood which was meant to be for older people that lives in Florida. So, they didn't want anyone under 16 to live there. My mom was living with her until she had Great Beard, older brother. The ones at the clubhouse told my grandmother and mom that Great Beard can't live there, but my mom can. The clubhouse and a few living in the neighborhood had harassed my mom, grandmother, and great aunt. As my great aunt was a real estate for the area and sold the house that my grandmother was living in during the time. A guy had threatened to shoot up my great aunt's office and someone had thrown a brick through one of the windows. They were not the only ones that had kids living there and being harassed. Including an elderly couple who had their grandkid due to their parents had died. After some time, everyone who was being harassed had started up a lawsuit against the clubhouse. It was a federal case due to housing urban development. The case took 5 years. The clubhouse was found in the wrong as the federal court and the judge was in favor of the kids and guardians. The clubhouse had filed for bankruptcy but not all the money was given out. Thank you for listening.